Rain stitched the river into broken glass the day we buried my sister, Lucy. I was still holding the folded program when I saw my dad, Richard Carter, a man who'd spent his life polishing our last name like a trophy, step off the gravel path and wade toward the dark water. In his hands, a small wooden box, wrapped in white cloth like a secret. Mom, Diane, stood back, eyes hollow, lips pressed into a line that didn't belong to a mother anymore. Dad didn't look at me. He just set the box down and let the current take it. I froze. Then the wind shifted, and from inside the box came a sound thin, fragile, impossible. I ran. My shoes slid in the mud. My breath snapped in my throat. "Please, be empty," I whispered, dragging it from the reeds with shaking hands. The lid was nailed. I wedged my car key beneath the seam and pried. And when it opened, the world fell open with it. I'm Emily Carter. In our town of Ashford, people used to say the Carters didn't cry. We commissioned statements. We wrote checks. We hosted galas for causes that wouldn't stain our cuffs. My father built Carter and Finch, a logistics empire that made him the kind of man who could speak softly and still make a room listen. He taught me 3 rules. Protect the family, protect the name, and protect the silence that protects both. Lucy never fit in those rules. She was sunshine where our house was glass and angles, gold hair, watercolor eyes, and paint on her jeans no matter how many dry cleaners Mom recommended. When she brought Ethan Miller home, a mechanic with oil under his nails and a laugh that bent our stern dining room into something almost human, Dad's smile turned precision sharp. "Ambition?" he asked over roast beef and tension. "Joy," Lucy answered. "I'm choosing joy." "She means him," Dad said to me later in the kitchen, as if Lucy were a spreadsheet with a red flag. "Joy doesn't put roofs over heads." "It can," I said quietly. "If you let it." He didn't. He tightened the nets. Curfews, rules, surveillance wrapped in concern. Mom fluttered between them, straightening napkins, swallowing apologies that never made it to air. The day Lucy told me she was pregnant, she was shaking so hard I wrapped her in the throw blanket on my sofa and made hot cocoa like we were kids. "Ethan's looking for a second job," she said. "We'll manage, Em. The baby kicked yesterday." I swear it was like he said my name. I touched her belly and felt something like a miracle. And I knew, the way you know tornado weather, that this would break our house down to studs. It did. In whispers, in slammed doors, in Dad's voice calm, clinical explaining, options that made Lucy's face go gray. She ran. Then came the hospital call. Complications. Lucy gone. The funeral script arrived in my inbox 2 hours later. A press release with lilies. And after we said goodbye, Dad walked to the river with a box. I wrenched the lid free. Inside lay a newborn wrapped in white cotton, lips bluish, a soft whimper snagging the air like thread. A hospital bracelet circled his tiny ankle. "Baby boy Miller." "Jesus," I breathed. "Lucy." The world went narrow. My hands moved before the rest of me caught up. I stripped off my wool scarf, swaddled him tighter, shoved the box aside with my knee. Hey," I whispered, scooping him to my chest. He was warm but not enough. His breath fluttered like something deciding whether to stay. Behind me, gravel. Footsteps. "Emily," Dad said. No Mr. Carter voice now, just gravel and a rusted hinge. "Give him to me." I turned, heart slamming. "You threw him in the river." He blinked. "You don't understand. Try me." He looked past me to the water, the current tugging at reeds like nervous fingers. "The papers were complicated. The timing. Your sister's choices created a child." I snapped. "A human." Mom's whisper cut the air. "Richard, please." He didn't move. "We can fix this, Emily." "Fix?" I clutched the baby closer. "He's not a stain." Sirens lived in my blood after that. I ran for the car. Mom stepped aside without looking at me. Dad stayed where the mud met his shoes, eyes cold as ledger lines. I drove to Street Augustine's, the only ER that wouldn't ask questions first. The triage nurse, broad-shouldered, tough-eyed, took one look and shouted, "Isolette now!" She asked for the story, and I gave her a version with sharp edges sanded down. "Found him near the river," I said. "Alone." She stared a fraction too long, then nodded, already moving. You saved him. I think he saved me, I said, and realized it was true. They took him. They wrote his name as Baby Carter, because I said it fast, and with a face that said, "Don't argue." I sat in a plastic chair between a vending machine and the future, shaking so hard I spilled coffee down my coat. When the doctor finally came, he said, "Early distress, mild hypothermia, but responsive. He's a fighter." "Of course he is," I whispered. "He's Lucy's." I named him Lucas, not Luke. Lucas, because it sounded like a bridge between Lucy and us. I signed foster papers with hands that had steadied dozens of million-dollar presentations and had never felt this unsteady. I went home to my apartment and learned the choreography of bottles and 3 a.m. Sirens disguised as cries. The first night, I fell asleep on the floor beside the bassinet, one hand inside so he could curl his tiny fingers around mine. When he did, something rewired. On day 3, Dad's car slid to the curb like a verdict. He didn't buzz. He appeared because men like him don't ask for doors. I met him in the hall outside my unit, Lucas, a warm weight against my chest. "Enough," he said, soft, dangerous. "You've had your moment. Give me the child, and I'll handle the necessary arrangements." Arrangements like drowning? My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like steel flexing. His jaw flexed back. Like discretion. Like not turning your sister's mistake into a headline that eats our lives. Lucy wasn't a mistake. He stared at Lucas. Something flickered, maybe fear, maybe regret, maybe nothing I was willing to name. "Emily, you will regret this rebellion. I already regret every time I didn't stop you sooner." "Diane," he said without looking, because of course Mom was behind him, gray and flinching. "Tell her." Mom swallowed. Your father. He's scared." "So am I," I said, but not of the truth. Dad stepped forward, and I stepped back. And we did that silent waltz until my door hit my shoulder blades. "You can't keep him," he said. "Watch me." "And money," he said, like it was oxygen. "You'll need it. Lawyers, child protective services, the press. I have friends." I lied. "And spine." He studied me a long time, then said, very softly, "You are making yourself an enemy of this family." I looked down at Lucas. He yawned, unbothered by dynasties. "No," I said. "I'm making us into one." The door closed between us. The lock slid home. On the other side, my father stood very still. Then his footsteps retreated. It took me a full minute to realize I was crying without sound. You can love your family and still defend yourself from them. That became my thesis. I called Ethan. The call went to voicemail. The second call rang, and when he finally answered, I heard breath and a hollow room. "Emily?" "Ethan," I said. "You need to sit down." He didn't. He leaned against whatever hadn't been repossessed yet, and listened as I poured the river into the phone. He didn't speak for so long. I thought the call had dropped. Finally, a shattered whisper. "They killed my son." "No," I said quickly. "No. I pulled him out. He's alive. He's safe." Silence. Then a sound I will never forget, a sound, like someone swallowing a scream. "Where?" "Street Augustine's. He's perfect." A chair scraped. A door slammed. "I'm coming." He arrived 38 minutes later, winded, eyes raw. The nurse made him scrub in, then led him to the isolette. He put his palm on the plastic and crumpled, shoulders shaking. "Lucas," he breathed. "Hey, little man." He looked at me like I'd dragged a star out of the river. "Why?" he asked. One word, the whole trial. "Because Lucy would never forgive me if I didn't," I said. "And because I didn't know how to be her sister and let him go." We made a plan in the language of people who can't afford to lose. Petition for emergency guardianship. Document everything. Copy hospital records. Keep a log of calls, threats, gifts with strings, apologies that weren't. We built a file thick enough to stop a bullet, and thin enough to hide under my mattress. Dad sent flowers big enough to rob oxygen from the room. "Congratulations on your charity," the card said. It wasn't signed. Mom sent a text at 2:13 a.m. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I stared at it until the letters blurred. At dawn, Lucas opened his eyes fully for the first time. They were the exact blue of Lucy's favorite paint. He blinked, like someone waking into a world on purpose. I put my finger in his palm. He squeezed. I said, "Good morning, my tiny rebellion," and felt the sunrise. The Carter courthouse sits like a marble threat at the end of Willow Street. On the day of the emergency hearing, the steps shone wet, the sky leaden. Dad didn't join us on the walk from the curb. He waited at the doors with a lawyer whose suit cost more than my car. Mom was a pale satellite, orbiting no one. Ethan squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens," he said, "we did the right thing." "Whatever happens?" I echoed, and we went in. Family courtrooms are small on purpose. The judge, Honorable Marion Decker, wore no nonsense like cologne. She read the file, tapped each page like a metronome, and finally looked up. "Miss Carter, Mr. Miller, Mr. Carter." "Your Honor," Dad's lawyer purred, "the Carters stand ready to assume full responsibility for this child's welfare. My client's daughter died under tragic circumstances, and in the immediate aftermath, mistaken decisions were made by distraught individuals." "Mistaken," Judge Decker repeated. Heat of grief. A sigh practiced. "My client deeply regrets." "Show me the regret," Judge Decker said. "Not the performance. Where is the mother of this child?" The air thinned. Ethan's jaw trembled, but he kept it still by will alone. "She's gone, Your Honor." "I see." The judge's eyes softened, then sharpened. "What I have is a newborn, a bereaved father of limited means, and a paternal aunt who has assumed temporary care. I also have allegations of abandonment." Dad's lawyer stood to object. The judge lifted a finger. "Sit. I'm speaking." She turned to me. "Miss Carter, do you have evidence of the child's endangerment?" "My statement," I said, voice steady because it had to be. "And a video." Dad's head snapped. "Video?" I nodded. "I have a dashcam that triggers when motion is detected near my parking space. My parents parked by the river path during the funeral procession. The dashcam caught them walking past, carrying a box. It didn't show the water, but it shows the box leaving and my father's hands empty on the return." Dad laughed, too loud. "A box could contain anything." "Then why?" I asked. "Was there a hospital bracelet on the baby's ankle with Lucy's name and Ethan's?" Silence landed like a gavel. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Carter?" Dad didn't falter easily. He angled his body toward the bench and wore his best boardroom apology. "Your Honor, my daughter made choices that endangered this family. Her mother and I believed we were delivering the child to a safe haven. We panicked. We failed. But we can correct that now, within the family, where he'll have every resource." "Safe haven?" The judge's voice cooled. "At a river?" Dad's mouth opened, then closed, like he'd stepped on a story with a hole in it. "Stand," Judge Decker said. He did. The room held its breath. "I am not a woman you can sell narrative to, Mr. Carter. I am a woman who counts facts. Here are mine. A newborn was found in a box in a river. The child's aunt risked her safety to retrieve him. The biological father came forward. The grandparents' actions are in question. The best interest of the child is my only client." She turned to Ethan. "Mr. Miller, can you provide a stable environment?" "I can," he said. "I'm applying for a night shift at the plant. My aunt, she's a retired nurse, has offered daytime care. I'll take parenting classes. I'll take anything. Please, he's my son." "And you, Miss Carter?" "I will support them," I said. "Financially, logistically, every way. We can live as a family if the court allows." Judge Decker steepled her fingers. "And the grandparents?" I looked at Dad. He looked at me like I'd left our name out in the rain. Then, shockingly, Mom spoke. "Your Honor," she whispered, voice barely there, "we were wrong." She looked at me, then Ethan, then the empty place in the room where Lucy should have been. "We were so afraid of losing face that we lost our daughter. I won't lose our grandson." Dad stared at her like a stranger. "Diane?" "No," she said. The gentlest word she'd ever made into a wall. The judge nodded slowly. "Here is my ruling." The gavel's shadow fell before the wood did. "Emergency, legal, and physical custody is granted jointly to Mr. Miller and Miss Emily Carter, pending a full review. Supervised visitation to the grandparents, contingent on compliance with court-appointed counseling. An investigator will visit all homes within 72 hours. Next hearing in 30 days. Dad's lawyer started 4 sentences and finished none. The gavel landed. The room exhaled. Ethan covered his face with both hands and made a sound like relief learning to walk. I sat very straight because if I moved I would come apart. Dad didn't look at me on his way out. Mom did. She mouthed, "Thank you." And then, almost silently, "I'm sorry." Outside, the sky broke open and rain fell bright and clean. We ran through it, laughing like idiots, like survivors, like maybe we'd finally chosen the right storm to stand in. 3 nights later, I went back to the river alone. I needed to see where the world had pivoted. The current murmured the way it had on the funeral day, as if it didn't keep secrets so much as grind them into sand. Dad was already there. He didn't turn when I stopped beside him. "You were always the troublesome one," he said, not unkindly. "I should have known it would be you." "It had to be someone," I said. "I just got there first." He breathed in, breathed out, ruined. "I was raised by a man who thought reputation was God. I sacrificed everything to that altar. You think I don't wake up hearing Lucy's voice? Do you think I don't see that box when I close my eyes?" I swallowed. "Then why?" "Because power is a corridor with doors that lock behind you," he said. "Every step you're more the man who takes the next step, until one day you're at a river holding a box and you don't know how to be anyone else." The wind lifted my hair. A car crossed the bridge. In the hospital parking lot, Ethan was probably feeding Lucas, counting breaths as if they were pearls. "You can step back," I said. "You can always step back." "Can I?" he asked. "When your childhood taught you that stepping back is death." He finally looked at me. He looked smaller. "You humiliated me in that courtroom." "I saved your grandson." I paused. "And maybe what's left of you." He laughed then, a broken thing. "You won, Emily." "No," I said. "Lucas did." We stood a while longer, listening to the water write and rewrite the same sentence. When I left, Dad didn't follow. The next morning, the counseling office called him 3 times. On the 4th, he answered. We moved slow and sturdy. Ethan took the night shift at the packing plant. I took mornings with Lucas, relearned how to be a person fueled by 2-hour naps and the smell of baby shampoo. Mom came to our apartment with bags of groceries and apologies she couldn't form. She learned to swaddle with the focus of someone rewiring a satellite. On her second visit, she brought a canvas from Lucy's room unfinished, full of light. "He should grow up with her colors," she said, voice shaking. Dad showed up once, hands empty. He stood in the doorway like a man asking a house permission to be forgiven. Lucas was asleep in his bassinet. Dad stared at him a long time. Then he cleared his throat and said, "I set up a scholarship in Lucy's name, for girls who want to study art and don't have fathers who can bear it." He swallowed. "If you'll let me, I'd like to set one up for boys with last names that don't open doors." Ethan nodded, jaw tight. "It's a start," Dad nodded back. "I will do the rest of the steps without being asked." He left a check on the counter. I didn't touch it for 2 days. Then I put it in a separate account labeled, Rivers Change Course. I made him sign an agreement that the funds were irrevocable and public. He didn't argue once. On Sundays, we took Lucas to the park. He slept through the birds. He squinted at the sky like it was a problem to solve. Ethan told him stories about engines and promises. I told him stories about his mother, how she once painted the sunrise onto our bathroom mirror because the world needed more mornings. At night, when the apartment was quiet, I wrote. Not press releases, not statements. A letter to Lucy. It began. "We nearly lost him. We nearly lost us. But I think if you can believe it from wherever you are, we're learning how to breathe." On the first clear day of spring, we brought Lucas to the river. Ethan carried him, I carried flowers. Mom came too, quiet and fragile and stubborn. Dad arrived late, hands open. We stood where the reeds bow. I placed the flowers on the water. They spun, then drifted like something letting go. "Hi, Luce," I said, "because some stories you tell out loud. He's everything." Ethan kissed Lucas's head. "You'd be proud." Mom closed her eyes. Dad opened his and didn't look away. He stepped closer, just enough, and said, soft so the river wouldn't steal it, "I'm sorry, Lucy." Then to Lucas, "I will spend the rest of my life deserving the chance to know you." Lucas stretched, a tiny fist unfurling. The wind shifted. Somewhere, a dog barked like laughter. We stood together, not perfect, not clean, not healed, but healing. Families aren't marble. They're soft tissue. They scar, they knit. I looked at the water and remembered the box. I looked at my son-nephew and saw a boy who would never be put in one. And when we left, the river kept moving, as it always does, but I swear it sounded like it was singing.